A Vatican envoy has called for the resignation of Pope Francis. He has accused the pontiff of failing to act earlier on sexual abuse allegations against former Cardinal Theodore McCarrick. In a scathing 11-page long statement, Archbishop Carlo Maria Viggiano has said that sanctions imposed on McCarrick by Pope Benedict XVI over sexual misconduct were lifted under Pope Francis. This happened despite reports about his gravely immoral behavior with priests. Viggiano said he informed Pope Francis in person in 2013 of the sanctions and how McCarrick had corrupted generations of priests, but his advice fell on deaf ears. The letter, written by Archbishop Viggiano, who has always been a critic of Pope Francis, came out as Pope Francis was visiting Ireland. In the meantime, Pope Francis has dismissed Archbishop Carlo Maria's explosive allegations.
Io ho letto questa mattina quel comunicato. Ho letto e io dirò sinceramente che devo dirvi questo. A lei e a tutti coloro di voi che sono interessati. Leggete voi attentamente il comunicato e fate voi il vostro giudizio. Io non dirò una parola su questo. Credo che il comunicato parla da se stesso.
Last month, the man at the center of the controversy, Theodore McCarrick, a prominent Vatican diplomat and the former Archbishop of Washington, D.C., resigned from the College of Cardinals over sexual abuse allegations. 88-year-old McCarrick has been one of the Vatican's most prominent officials. As Archbishop of Washington, McCarrick helped form church policies aimed at protecting young people from sexual abuse. Now, his resignation follows an investigation by law enforcement officials and an independent forensic agency that found evidence that McCarrick had sexually abused a teenager 47 years ago while serving as a priest in New York. There are also claims of misconduct and harassment against McCarrick involving adults. Earlier this month, a detailed investigation revealed the story of a man who said he was abused in his early 20s by McCarrick. At the time, McCarrick was serving as a New Jersey bishop in the 1980s. That's the Pope in the eye of the storm. Pope Francis is the spiritual leader to more than 1/6 of the world's population. That's 1.3 billion people. Born in Argentina as George Mario Bologo, Francis is the first pope to come from South America and the first non-European pope in over 1,000 years. Before he was ordained as a priest, he worked as a bouncer in a bar in Argentina to help pay for his studies. In March 2013, Pope Francis flew to Castel Gandolfo to meet with Benedict XVI. This was the first time in the history of the church that the current pope met with his predecessor. That was only the beginning of many firsts. In 2013, Francis released an 85-page call for the church to rethink rules and customs that are no longer widely understood. Within the Catholic community, this was seen as a fierce challenge to the status quo. The document's main message was that Catholics should not be afraid of rethinking long-held traditions. The same year, Francis had said the Church has the right to express its opinions but not to interfere spiritually in the lives of gays and lesbians, saying that Christians owe apologies to gays and others who have been offended or exploited by the Church. These were remarks that some Catholics hailed as a breakthrough in the Church's tone towards homosexuality. He urged priests around the world to be more accepting of gays and lesbians, divorced Catholics and other people living in what the Church considers irregular situations. In November 2016, he extended indefinitely the power of Catholic priests to forgive women who undergo abortions. On multiple occasions, the Pope has spoken on the need to create broader opportunities for a more incisive female presence in the Church, calling on Catholics to be unafraid of trying new things. The Pope has also spoken out against the Church's centralization. In early 2014, he became the first pontiff to grace the cover of the Rolling Stone magazine, and in 2015 released a music album called Wake Up that has been classified as pop rock. He has continued to push for climate change reforms, better treatment of refugees and greater attention to persecution of religious minorities. In fact, during a Vatican conference, Francis had argued to change the official church teaching on death penalty. The Catholic Church teaches that recourse to death penalty is permitted. The Pope says the death penalty is inadmissible. The Pope is known for not towing the line and breaking away from convention, a leader who is as vocal about social issues as political ones. His silence on the latest controversy is fueling questions which have so far gone unanswered. In other updates, the United Nations report has said that Myanmar army must be investigated for genocide in Rakhine State. The report strongly condemns the role the army played in the exodus of Rohingyas. It says that the army's tactic was consistently and grossly disproportionate to actual security threats. The report further names 6 senior military figures that the United Nations believes should go on trial. They've also fiercely criticized Myanmar's de facto leader Aung San Suu Kyi for failing to stop the violence against the ethnic community.
We are deeply disappointed that State Councillor Daw Aung San Suu Kyi has not used her position or her moral authority to stem, prevent or condemn the unfolding events in Rakhine State. In bringing out this report, we hope the international community will act not only to bring justice for victims, but also to help deter future atrocities.
India successfully conducted its first test flight partially powered by biofuel. The test flight was from the northern Indian city of Dehradun to the national capital of New Delhi. A concoction of biofuel powered one of the turbine engines of the flight. The DGCA, or the Directorate General of Civil Aviation, allowed the flight test to be conducted with 25% of biofuel and 75% of aviation turbine fuel. To test the flight, as multiple officials travelled on that very flight from Dehradun to New Delhi. The flight was received by key cabinet ministers and airlines top management at Delhi's IGI Airport Terminal 2. Now, this development assumes significance as high air turbine fuel prices have hit India's domestic airline sector, with all the major players reporting losses for the first quarter of 2018-19. Currently, fuel prices constitute 45 to 50% of the overall operations cost of domestic airlines. India's ATF prices are among the highest in the world due to the addition of state levies and taxes. The fuel is not under the goods and services tax ambit. Besides, the success of the flight will pave the way for further testing and aid in fulfilling the central government's move to curtail India's dependence on crude oil imports. It will also help reduce the cost of air travel by 20%. And on to news that will be certainly cheered by champagne and wine lovers. 2018 is witnessing a bumper harvest of grapes in Champagne in France. French winemakers believe it is going to be one of the best years in a decade, and the weather across Europe is the main factor behind the great expectations. Here's what's brewing.
In the hilly region of Champagne in eastern France, wine growers are bringing in grapes early this year for a harvest they expect to be one of the best in a decade. The harvest began 2 weeks ahead of schedule at the end of August instead of the usual September. That's largely because weather conditions have been ideal. A rainy winter followed by a summer heat wave. The result? A bumper crop that promises high-quality bubbly.
My smile speaks for itself. We are very happy of what we are witnessing in 2018 in terms of earliness and quality of harvest. We have never experienced this before in the Champagne region in terms of quantity and quality. This will enable us to put into the cellars some amazing wines, which will be on the market 3 years later.
Champagne wines are expected to see a sharp rise in production in 2018, up 56% from last year to 3.5 million hectolitres, after several years of disappointing grape yield due to poor weather. While most champagne wine growers are celebrating an exceptional harvest, others see the beginning of long-term change in the region.
If we want to keep the spirit and finesse of champagne wines, we need to set the date of harvest earlier in such a way that we do not have an excessive concentration. What is exceptional this year is that we are not yet used to setting harvest dates in August. But with climate change, we will have to be prepared to regularly harvest in August.
The trend has already emerged over the last decade, with 3 harvests starting in August rather than September. More than 15,000 champagne wine growers will likely harvest between 13,000 and 16,000 kgs of grapes per hectare. And that leaves a comfortable margin for producers to use only the best grapes to put into cellar amazing wines which will be on the market in 3 years. Bureau Report, WION.